Good evening and welcome to part two. This video is going to hopefully be very quick. We're going to clean up the Create React app. This is not a deep dive. I don't have a plan for the kind of application we're going to be building. These videos are purely there to touch on specific topics and learn as we go. If you have a problem with any of my logic or any suggestions on how I can improve my content, please go crazy. The comments are there for that. But yeah, without further ado, what you're looking at is essentially the end product of what we're going to be creating is just bare bones. We're going to take what Create React App did and we're going to tear it down to just something very simple. Um, First thing we're going to do is on GitHub, I went and created a React Unplanned repository. There is nothing in this repository. I just created it a few minutes ago, and we are going to be using as our first little stepping stone towards a more enjoyable development future. We are going to implement Git version controlling so that if anything breaks, we have something to fall back onto. So we're just going to copy this repo URL and we are going to go to the app, which is in the exact same state as we left it in the first video. So first thing we want to do is we want to initialize Git on the repo. So we're going to go git init. Now we have added Git. Next thing we want to do is we want to add the remote URL. So we want to add the origin of where we're going to be sending our changes and updates to the app. And for that, we're going to use the command git remote add, and we will call it origin, and we will link it towards this repository. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create the branch git branch hyphen m main. So this just, I'm not exactly sure why this is a problem, but when you're creating and when you initialize Git and you are adding your origins, you have to, for some reason, rename your main branch to main, just so that your initialize Git picks it up as a branch within the repository. So we're going to do that. Then next step is we're going to git add hyphen a. And now what we're doing is we're adding all the changes that you can see here, everything that's in green. You'll note that node modules is still light gray. That's because the git ignore file that we have over here tells us that we must just ignore all and every change made to node modules because we don't want to version control the node modules folder. That will become a logistical nightmare. So now we've added them to be committed, and now we're going to commit them. So git commit -am, which is commit all changes with the following message, which is the initial commit. Now that we've added all our changes of the initial Create React app, a very base foundation to work on, we can now go ahead and push these changes to the remote origin called React Unplanned. So what we'll do is we go git push origin main. So what we're telling it is to push all the changes to the origin for this branch. Once all of that has been pushed, if we now go back to this, I'm just going for reference sake, copy this so that I can add it to the description for us later, so that you have something to fall back onto. And if I refresh this page now, we will have the initial main branch with all our changes and the Create React app startup scripts. Fantastic. Step one, check. Next thing we want to do is we want to remove, no wait, hold on. Let's install the linter first so that when we start removing things that we're still following standards. So we're going to be using Eslint for that. Eslint has a npm package that is specifically formulated for Create React app installs. We are going to grab this line here, which is all the Eslint plugins required for the linter to work. So we're going to run that npm install save dev. That will now just go ahead and install everything that we need for Eslinting. That was a lot quicker than I expected it to be. Anyway, now that we have that installed, the next thing we want to do is we want to install the Eslint extension for VS Code. We want to edit the extension and we are going to search for eslint.validate. We will then edit those settings in JSON, and now you will see that I have this configuration here. So essentially what we're telling it is we want the Eslint validator to validate TypeScript and TypeScript React. We can also add JavaScript, and we can add JavaScript React. But you will notice that here we don't set the settings to autofix. But because we are not using JavaScript, I'm just not going to worry about those two elements because this is a TypeScript exercise. Now, once we've configured that, and we're going to save that, the next thing we want to do is we want to configure or set up the ESLint configuration file for our project. This will be a growing file in the sense that we're going to be adding rules to it as we need to. We are going to set up new validation checks. So everything that would configure how ESLint lints your project and validates it will be done within this configuration. So we will create a new file and we're going to call it .eslintrc.json. Now you get .json and you get .js, but I prefer JSON. It's just a little bit cleaner. And then in the Eslint, what we're going to do is we're going to set up the parser and the plugin it needs to use for that parser. So the parser is using the @TypeScript or the @typing's TypeScript Eslint parser, and then we are extending the parser with the plugin. And please, I stand corrected. I did have to go and read up about Eslint because I'm used to using TSLint, but that's been deprecated in favor of Eslint. So this will now configure your project to make sure that it's using the correct rules and the correct plugins in order to validate your code. Fantastic. We will now close that. We are now going to go git status to just see what we changed. We modified the package log file because we installed a whole bunch of new packages, and we also modified the package JSON file. If we open up the package.json file and go to dev dependencies, you will see that we have all the ESLint elements installed in order for us to be able to do our configuration, our linting. Now we want to commit these changes and push it up to manage. However, we want to manage how this gets done. So what we'll do is we'll go git checkout -b. We'll call this a feature, and we'll just call it ESLint setup. Now we're going to git add -a. So we're adding all the changes to be committed. Now we're going to git commit -am. So we're now committing all the changes with a message, and we're just saying the initial ESLint setup. Now what we'll do is we can push origin, and we can push this to the origin. So we're pushing the initial ESLint setup. From here, we can create a pull request. Now, because I am the author of this PR, I cannot merge in my own code. Absolutely love that. So in order to work around that, and I don't have to wait for somebody to verify my changes, I am going to check out main again. Keep in mind, you can also click on the bottom left of VS Code and then select the branch you want to switch to. So we've switched to main. Now I want to go git merge, and I want to merge in the changes from the ESLint, and I'm going to git push origin main. So I'm pushing all the updated main branch. And now if I refresh this, I don't have to create the pull request anymore. Why? Because all my changes on main, so if I go to the initial commit, I will see that, or if I go to my branch, I'll see that the last change was the Eslint setup, and then this will contain all the Eslint setups, and it will be on the main branch. Now, the next thing we want to do is we're going to start cleaning up this project. So, first thing we want to do, we don't want any .css. I'm going to opt for using styled components. It just makes it simpler. It follows SAS and seriously cool style sheets, or SCSS standards, and it also allows you to create global theming. So for the purposes of this React application, I'm going to delete all the .css files. I'm going to go into the index files. I'm going to remove this CSS file, and I'm going to remove the app CSS file. Next, I want to remove the logo. I don't want that logo anymore, so I'm going to kill this one as well. Then I'm going to remove this entire section of code, and I'm just going to have code echo hello world. We're going to save that. We're going to go over here. I'm going to remove the report vitals. I've never needed to use the report vitals, so I'm just going to remove it because it's not something I think we're going to use during this tutorial. And I'm also going to remove this method here now. Now, next thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this error. There are two ways we can get rid of this. The first way is the wrong way. We're using Typescript, so we always want to typecast our responses, our objects, our interfaces, or with interfaces. We want to enforce typecasting. But I'm going to show you how you can disable specific linting rules. What you would do is you would copy this linting rule here. So we'll just grab the whole thing like that. We're just going to grab that there. Did I grab it now? Sure, let's try again. So I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to open up the Eslint config. I'm going to create a new property called rules. But again, do not do this. If you were pushing a PR with code and you had this rule added to the Eslint config, I will go, no, not happening. But what you would do is we would need only the part from the @ sign. We will create a rule for it, and we will say that we want it off. Now, if I save that, now all of a sudden you'll see that warning disappears, but we don't want that. We want that rule, but just for future reference, this is how you would configure the Eslint config file to remove specific rules. Next, we want to change how this is written. I don't like return functions like this. I prefer to create class objects, or just creating objects and then using those objects as modules. So what we're going to do is we're going to just keep this snippet of code here. Actually, as a matter of fact, let me just grab that entire line there. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a class, and we're going to call it app, and it's going to be extended extends react.component. We are going to create a public function on a public method called render, and this will then return that. Take out that. We're going to save that. We're going to grab the app object, and we're going to make that the only export for this TSX file. So we go export default app. We're going to save that. Now, here we have another warning. It's exactly the same warning as we had previously. We aren't typecasting the response. So in this case, we're returning a JSX element. So we will now type it with JSX.element, and voila, gone is our warning. Then what we need to do is we need to update the test. So we're using jest DOM. Um, I'm going to be using this a little bit during the course of this project, but predominantly I'm going to focus on using storybooks, which can both act as a test to test components, but as a visual aid and a reference for implementing components. And I find that far more valuable than writing just DOM tests that only test in the command line. I prefer having a visual representation as well as using that visual representation for testing is far more valuable. So what we'll do here is we'll just make sure that we're validating the return render for echo hello world, summation mark, renders hello world in the app output. So we'll save that. And there we go. I do believe that is all they wrote. So we're going to save that. We are going to run npm run start. So this will start up my environment, and I'm going to duplicate this, and then I'm just going to npm run test. So here we go, and there we are. Voila. If we run the test, it's going to fail. Why is it failing? Because my app returns echo hello world with quotes. So if I go to test and I update this to that, and I then save it, we are good to go. Fantastic. Now that we've made these changes, I'm just going to quit out of the processes. I'm going to git checkout -b. We'll say it's a feature and it's the initial clean up of let's just say that's the initial cleanup. And we will then add the changes, git add -a, git commit -am, initial cleanup, excuse my spelling, and then we're going to git push origin this. But because we can't merge in our own code, I'm going to go to check out main, git merge this branch, git push origin main. And if we go back to our git repo and we refresh this, we will now see that we've got the initial cleanup. If we go into here, we will see a whole bunch of deleted code of things that we do not need. We don't have the logo.ts or the .svg for the logos. We don't have the CSS files anymore because we're going to be writing our own CSS files. One file here that you will see now, I had to go and read up about this. What this essentially is, or adds, and this is only part of what I think it does, is it allows Create React App installs to make use of asset imports as components. For example, you can import an image and use it as a React component. You can import, I think it's images the predominant one. So bitmaps, PNGs, SVGs, they will all be seen as components once they're imported into the asset or into the JSX code. So yeah, there we go. I will add the links to everything we've just discussed into the description so that you can get to grips with some of the more detailed explanations. But just to quickly recap, we created a Git repository. We added the Git origin to our initialized local Git project. We committed the initial code base. We pushed that up to the main branch. Then what we did is we made the initial changes to the Linter under a new branch. Once the Eslint was configured, we merged that branch into main, pushed that back up to the repo. Then we went and did the cleanup. Removed all the images we didn't need, removed all the CSS files we aren't going to be using, and just simplified the entire base scaffolding so that the next step after this, we've got a blank canvas to play with. I hope this was of some help to you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you in part 3 once I've gotten a better idea of what I want to talk in there. But what we're essentially going to look at is finding a good UI framework, something that simplifies the development process so that we can focus on business logic and not have to worry about too much styling. But I do know that some styling will be required on specific elements. Until next time, please let me know what you think in the comments below. Reach out to me if you have any feedback, if you don't agree with some of the things I've done. Um, just remember, we're all here to learn. So if you do disagree, just help us all understand as to why. Have a good one, and thanks for spending some time with me today.